Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty and watched the alien ship approach. The vessel looked like a giant seashell made of silver metal. It moved through space with the grace of a swimming creature. Jake had trained for this moment his whole life, but his heart still beat fast. Today, humanity would meet the Zephyrians for the first time. The communications officer turned to Jake. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Kim, and she looked nervous. "Captain, they are requesting permission to board," she said. Jake nodded and gave the order. In 1 hour, the first aliens would step onto a human ship. The thought made him both excited and worried. Jake walked to the docking bay where his crew waited. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez stood near the airlock. She was the ship's expert on alien life and would serve as the main contact person. Dr. Sam Carter stood beside her with his recording equipment ready. The anthropologist wanted to document everything. "Remember, everyone," Jake said to his crew, "we represent all of humanity today. Be respectful, but stay alert. We don't know what to expect." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 5 figures entered the bay, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. The Zephyrians were unlike anything he had imagined. They stood tall on 2 legs like humans, but their skin was a soft blue-green color that seemed to glow. Their faces were elegant, with large dark eyes and small gill slits on their necks that opened and closed slowly. The first alien to step forward wore robes of deep blue material that moved like water. "I am Ambassador Keth Morden of the Zephyrian Empire," the being said in perfect English. "We come in peace to learn about your species." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We are honored to meet you." But Jake's eyes moved past the ambassador to the figure behind him. She was smaller than the others and wore robes of pale green. Her skin was lighter than the ambassador's and seemed to shimmer. When she looked at Jake, her large eyes showed curiosity and intelligence. "May I present Princess Lyra Vexthera," the ambassador said. "She is the heir to our throne and wishes to learn your customs." The princess stepped forward, and Jake felt something strange happen. Her skin changed color slightly, becoming more golden. She seemed surprised by this and quickly looked down. "It is an honor, Your Highness," Jake said. He wasn't sure if he should bow or shake hands. The princess solved his problem by placing her hand over her heart and nodding. "The honor is mine, Captain Morrison," she said. Her voice was soft and musical. "I have studied your language, but this is my first time speaking with a human." Amy stepped forward and introduced herself. "Your Highness, I will be your guide during your stay. I hope we can learn much from each other." The princess smiled, and Jake noticed her skin grew slightly warmer in color. "I look forward to it, Commander Rodriguez. Your species fascinates us. You seem so direct in your communication." Over the next few hours, Jake showed the Zephyrian delegation around the ship. The princess asked many questions about human technology and customs. She seemed especially interested in the crew's casual interactions with each other. "In our society," she explained to Jake as they walked through the ship's garden, "there are many rules about how different ranks speak to each other. But your crew members joke and laugh together even when their positions are very different." Jake nodded. "We believe respect comes from actions, not just titles. A good leader listens to everyone." The princess's skin grew golden again. "How refreshing," she said softly. That evening, the humans hosted a dinner for their guests. Jake sat across from Princess Lyra and found himself drawn to her intelligent conversation. She asked about human art and music with genuine curiosity. When Jake described how humans express emotions through song, her eyes grew wide. "You share your inner feelings with strangers through music?" she asked. "This is not considered private. Music brings us together," Jake explained. "When someone sings about love or sadness, we understand because we have felt those things too." The princess was quiet for a long moment. Her skin shifted through several colors that Jake was beginning to recognize as signs of deep thought. "Your species is very brave," she finally said, "to share so much of yourselves with others." After dinner, Jake found the princess standing alone in the observation lounge looking out at the stars. The earth hung in the distance like a blue marble. Jake approached carefully, not wanting to disturb her thoughts. "It's beautiful," she said, without turning around. "Your world looks so alive from here." "It is alive," Jake replied. "Sometimes I forget that until I see it from space." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Jake studied the princess's profile and wondered what she was thinking. Her skin had settled into a soft, pale blue that seemed peaceful. "Captain," she said finally, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Are you happy?" she asked. "With your life and choices?" The question surprised Jake. "Yes, I think I am. I get to explore space and meet people like you." "Why do you ask?" The princess sighed and her skin grew darker. "In my world, our paths are chosen for us before birth. I will marry who the council selects and rule as they direct. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to choose my own way." Jake felt a pang of sympathy. "That sounds lonely." "It is," she admitted. Then she turned to face him. "But meeting your people gives me hope. Perhaps there are other ways to live." The next morning, Jake found himself looking forward to seeing the princess again. Over breakfast, she told him about Zephyrian poetry and their deep connection to water and tides. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Jake found himself asking many questions. Amy pulled Jake aside later. "Captain, I need to tell you something important," she said quietly. "I've been studying Zephyrian customs, and there's something you should know about the princess." "What is it?" Jake asked. "Her skin changes color with her emotions. The golden color she shows around you means she's developing romantic feelings. But in her culture, such feelings can only be expressed through formal courtship that takes years." Jake felt his heart skip. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. And Captain, the Zephyrian delegation has noticed too. They're concerned about her behavior." Jake looked across the room where Princess Lyra was laughing at something Dr. Carter had said. Her skin glowed with warm colors, and her eyes sparkled with joy. In that moment, Jake realized something that would change everything. He was falling in love with an alien princess, and she might be falling in love with him too. The days that followed brought Jake and Princess Lyra closer together. Every morning, she would ask Amy if she could spend time learning about human culture from the captain. Amy always agreed, though Jake could see the worry in her eyes. The princess's skin continued to show warm golden colors whenever Jake was near. Jake showed Lyra human music by playing recordings from Earth's greatest composers. When she heard Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, tears formed in her large, dark eyes. "Such beauty," she whispered, as her skin glowed soft silver. "Your people put their souls into these sounds. Music is how we share our deepest feelings," Jake explained. Even when we can't find the words, Lyra nodded slowly. "In our world, we have songs too, but they follow ancient patterns. No one has written new music in centuries. It would be considered improper to change tradition." Jake felt sad hearing this. But how do you express new feelings or ideas? The princess looked down at her hands. We don't. We accept what has always been. That afternoon, Jake taught Lyra about human literature. He shared stories of adventure and romance that made her skin cycle through many colors. When he told her about Romeo and Juliet, she gasped. They chose love over family duty, she said in wonder, even knowing it would bring tragedy. Sometimes love is worth any price, Jake replied without thinking. Then he realized what he had said and felt his face grow warm. Lyra's skin turned bright gold. They stared at each other for a long moment before she looked away. In my world, such thinking is dangerous, she said softly. Dr. Carter approached them later that day with news that worried Jake. Captain, I've been studying more about Zephyrian customs. Princess Lyra is already promised to someone. His name is Lord Commander Vex Thulmore, and they were betrothed as children. Jake felt his heart sink. Does she love him? Love isn't part of their marriage customs, Carter explained. It's about political alliance and continuing bloodlines. But, Captain, there's something else. The Zephyrian Council has been watching the princess's behavior. They're planning to recall her soon. That evening, Jake found Lyra in the ship's library reading human poetry. Her skin was a sad blue color, and she looked troubled. Is everything all right? He asked. She showed him the book she was reading. It was a collection of love poems by human writers throughout history. Your people write so freely about their feelings, she said. This poet speaks of choosing his own beloved despite his family's wishes. Jake sat beside her. What did you think of? It frightens me, she admitted. But it also makes me feel something I have never felt before, like there might be another way to live. They talked for hours about human customs and Zephyrian traditions. Lyra told Jake about her childhood on the water worlds of her empire. She described floating cities and coral palaces beneath the waves. She spoke of loneliness, too, and the weight of royal duties. I have never had a real friend, she confessed. Everyone treats me as a symbol, not a person. But with you and your crew, I feel like myself for the first time. Jake wanted to take her hand, but knew it would be inappropriate. Instead, he said, You are welcome here for as long as you wish to stay. Lyra's skin turned golden again. I wish that could be forever, she whispered. The next morning brought troubling news. A Zephyrian warship had appeared at the edge of the system. Ambassador Mordun received a message and his expression grew stern. He spoke with Princess Lyra in their own language, and Jake watched her skin turn pale with distress. What's happening? Amy asked. The ambassador turned to face the humans. Lord Commander Vex Thulmore has arrived to escort Princess Lyra home. Her extended stay here has caused concern among our leadership. Jake felt panic rise in his chest. She's welcome to stay as long as she likes. She's done nothing wrong. In our culture, the ambassador explained, unmarried royalty must not form inappropriate attachments. The princess's emotional displays have been noted. Lyra stood up, and Jake could see she was fighting back tears. Her skin cycled rapidly between colors, showing her inner turmoil. I understand, she said formally. I will prepare to leave, but Jake could hear the pain in her voice. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked the empty corridors of his ship knowing that tomorrow, the princess would be gone forever. The thought made him feel hollow inside. He found her in the observation lounge again, looking out at the stars. This time she was crying, and her skin was the darkest blue he had ever seen. When she saw him, her colors brightened slightly. "I don't want to go," she said simply. "For the first time in my life, I feel alive, and now I must return to a world where I will never feel this way again." Jake moved to stand beside her. "Lyra," he said, using her name without her title for the first time. "You don't have to accept a life without happiness." She turned to face him, and he saw hope and fear warring in her eyes. "What choice do I have? I am bound by duty and tradition." "Maybe some traditions need to change," Jake said. "Maybe your people need someone brave enough to show them a different way." Lyra's skin glowed brighter. "You really believe that?" "I believe in you," Jake replied. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. If anyone can change things, it's you." They stood close together, looking into each other's eyes. Jake could feel something building between them that he had never experienced before. It was more than attraction or friendship. It was a connection that seemed to transcend species. "Jake," Lyra said softly, "I need to tell you something. In my world, when our skin shows gold around someone, it means we have formed a deep emotional bond. What humans might call love." Jake's heart raced. "And what does that mean for you?" "It means I am breaking every rule of my society," she replied, "and I don't care anymore." The next morning, Lord Commander Vex Thulmore arrived with his escort. He was tall and imposing, with dark blue skin and cold eyes. He wore armor that seemed to be made from some kind of shell material and carried himself with military precision. When he saw Princess Lyra, he spoke to her in sharp tones in their language. Jake didn't understand the words, but he could hear disapproval and anger. Lyra's skin turned pale, and she lowered her head. "Princess Lyra will return with me immediately," Thulmore announced to the humans. "This cultural exchange has gone on too long." Jake stepped forward. "With respect, Commander, your princess is a guest on my ship. She can leave when she chooses." Thulmore's eyes narrowed. "You forget yourself human. She is my betrothed and under my protection." Lyra raised her head, and Jake saw defiance in her eyes. Her skin began to glow golden. "I am not your property, Vex Thulmore," she said clearly. "I am still a princess of the Empire, and I will decide when I leave this ship." The Zephyrian commander looked shocked. Clearly no one had ever spoken to him this way, especially not his intended bride. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Jake realized that everything was about to change. The princess had found her courage, and he knew that whatever happened next would determine both their futures. The standoff in the docking bay lasted several tense minutes. Lord Commander Vex Thulmore stared at Princess Lyra with cold anger, while she stood her ground with glowing golden skin. Jake felt proud of her courage, but worried about what it might cost her. Ambassador Moradun stepped between them, speaking rapidly in Zephyrian. Jake could see him trying to calm the situation, but Thulmore's expression remained stern. Finally, the commander turned to Jake with barely controlled rage. "You have corrupted our princess with your human ways," he said. "She was pure and obedient before coming to this ship." Jake felt his own anger rise. "I've done nothing but treat her with respect and friendship. If that's corruption, then your society has bigger problems than you think." Amy grabbed Jake's arm, trying to stop him from making things worse, but the damage was done. Thulmore's face darkened, and he reached for his weapon. Princess Lyra quickly moved between them. "Enough," she commanded. Her voice carried royal authority despite her young age. "Vex Thulmore, you will not threaten our hosts. Captain Morrison, you have my gratitude, but please do not make this harder than it must be." Jake saw the pain in her eyes and knew she was trying to protect him. The thought that she might sacrifice her happiness for his safety made his chest ache. He realized in that moment just how deeply he cared for her. The Zephyrian delegation left to return to their ship, but Thulmore's parting words echoed in the docking bay. "You have until tomorrow to say your farewells, Princess. Then you come home to fulfill your duties." That evening, Jake couldn't concentrate on anything. He tried to review reports and plan ship operations, but his mind kept returning to Lyra. Amy found him in his quarters, staring out the viewport at the Zephyrian warship. "Captain," she said gently, "I know this is hard, but maybe it's for the best, and relationship between you two could cause a war." Jake turned to face his friend. "Amy, you believe in love?" She looked surprised by the question. "Of course I do." "Then how can you say it's better to live without it?" Jake asked. "Lyra has never been happy a day in her life until she came here. Now she has to go back to a loveless marriage and a life of duty. How is that better?" Amy sighed. "Because sometimes personal happiness has to be sacrificed for the greater good. You know this, Jake. You're a Starfleet officer." But Jake shook his head. "What good is peace if it's built on the misery of good people? What kind of future are we creating if we force someone like Lyra to live without love?" Later that night, Jake made a decision that would change everything. He found Princess Lyra in the ship's garden, sitting by the small pond they had installed for their Zephyrian guests. She was trailing her fingers in the water, and her skin showed deep blue sadness. "I was hoping you would come," she said without looking up. "I wanted to memorize every moment of this place before I have to leave." Jake sat beside her on the bench. Up close he could see tears on her cheeks that sparkled like small diamonds. "Lyra," he said softly, "I need to ask you something important." She turned to face him, and her skin began to show flecks of gold. "What is it, Jake?" He took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would change both their lives forever. "If you could choose your own path, what would you choose?" "I would choose to stay here," she said immediately. "I would choose to learn more about your people and maybe teach them about mine. I would choose friendship and laughter and the freedom to feel whatever emotions come to me." Jake's heart pounded as he looked into her dark eyes. "And if someone asked you to share that path with them, what would you say?" Lyra's breath caught, and her skin began to glow brighter. "What are you asking? Me, Jake?" He reached out and gently took her hand. Her skin was warm and smooth and tingled slightly at his touch. "I'm asking if you would marry me, Lyra. I know we're from different worlds and different species, but I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." For a moment, Princess Lyra just stared at him in shock. Then her skin flushed bright, crimson in what Jake now knew was the Zephyrian equivalent of a human blush. Her large eyes filled with wonder and joy, and something else that took Jake's breath away. "You love me," she whispered, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "More than life itself," Jake replied. "I know it's crazy and impossible, but I had to ask. I couldn't let you leave without knowing how I feel." Tears ran freely down Lyra's face now, but her skin glowed like a star. "No one has ever asked me what I wanted before," she said through her tears. "No one has ever cared about my happiness. And now you offer me love and choice and a future I never dared to dream of. Is that a yes?" Jake asked with a smile. But before Lyra could answer, the garden doors burst open. Lord Commander Thulmore stood there with several armed guards, and his face was twisted with fury. Behind him came Ambassador Mordun, looking deeply troubled. "Step away from our princess, human," Thulmore commanded, drawing his weapon. Your behavior is an insult to our entire species. Jake stood up slowly, keeping himself between Thulmore and Lyra. Commander, I've made an honorable proposal of marriage. In human culture, this is how we express our intentions. Thulmore laughed harshly. Marriage. You think you can steal a royal princess with your primitive customs. She belongs to me and to our empire. I don't belong to anyone, Princess Lyra said, standing up beside Jake. Her skin blazed with gold and red colors that Jake had never seen before. And yes, Jake Morrison, I will marry you. I choose love over duty and freedom over obligation. The words hit the Zephyrians like a physical blow. Ambassador Morden actually staggered backward while the guards raised their weapons in shock. But it was Thulmore's reaction that worried Jake most. The commander's face went completely pale and his eyes burned with rage. You dare reject your betrothal, he snarled at Lyra. You would shame our bloodlines for this inferior creature. The only shame is forcing someone to marry without love, Lyra replied. Jake has shown me what real partnership looks like, what equality and respect mean. I will not go back to a life of servitude. Thulmore raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Jake. Then you have chosen poorly, Princess. Remove the obstacle and you will see sense. But before he could fire, Amy and several security officers entered the garden with their own weapons drawn. Lower your weapons, Amy commanded. You are guests on this ship and you will behave as such. The standoff stretched taut as both sides faced each other across the small garden. Jake could feel Lyra trembling beside him, and he reached out to take her hand again. Her skin flashed even brighter colors as their fingers intertwined. This is an act of war, Thulmore declared. You harbor a runaway royal and interfere with our internal affairs. This is an act of love, Jake replied calmly. And in human culture, love conquers all. Ambassador Morden finally found his voice. Princess Lyra, please reconsider. Your actions will have consequences that reach far beyond your personal desires. But Lyra squeezed Jake's hand tighter and lifted her chin with royal dignity. Then perhaps it is time for consequences, she said. Perhaps it is time for change, Jake felt his heart swell with pride and love as he looked at the brave woman beside him. She was willing to risk everything for the chance at happiness, and he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The princess had made her choice, and there was no going back. The golden glow of her skin lit up the entire garden, like a beacon of hope in the darkness. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra was truly free, and Jake had given her that gift with 3 simple words. Will you marry me? Words that would change the fate of 2 species forever. The tension in the garden remained thick as both groups kept their weapons trained on each other. Jake could see the conflict in Ambassador Morden's eyes, while Thulmore's rage seemed to grow with each passing second. Princess Lyra stood beside Jake with her skin blazing gold and her chin raised defiantly. There must be another way, the ambassador said, finally lowering his weapon slightly. Princess, surely we can find a compromise that honors both cultures. There is no compromise with duty, Thulmore snarled. She returns with me now, or this becomes a matter for our fleets to settle. But Jake saw something change in Ambassador Morden's expression. The older Zephyrian was studying Princess Lyra with new eyes, taking in her glowing skin and proud posture. Your Highness, he said slowly, may I speak with you privately? Lyra looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Very well, Ambassador. But Captain Morrison stays close. They move to a corner of the garden while the security teams maintain their standoff. Jake watched as Mordun spoke to Lyra in low, urgent tones. Her skin flickered between colors as she listened and responded. Finally, she turned back to Jake with something like hope in her eyes. "The ambassador has reminded me of something important," she said. "There are old laws in our empire that have not been used for centuries, laws that allowed royalty to choose their own partners in exceptional circumstances." Jake felt his heart leap. "What kind of circumstances?" "When the choice serves the greater good of the empire," Mordun explained. "If Princess Lyra can prove that her marriage to you would benefit our people more than her arranged union, then the council might consider it." Thulmore moved closer with his weapon still raised. "Impossible. No human union could benefit our empire more than strengthening our military bloodlines." But Princess Lyra stepped forward with newfound determination. "What if this human union could create something new?" vexed Thulmore. "What if it could build bridges between our species and open new possibilities for both?" Over the next few hours, the situation evolved rapidly. Jake found himself in the middle of complex negotiations that would determine not just his personal future, but potentially the relationship between two species. Admiral Lisa Burke joined the discussions via subspace communication, bringing the weight of Earth's government to the talks. Dr. Carter worked frantically to research Zephyrian law, while Amy coordinated with Earth's diplomatic corps. The old laws that Ambassador Mordun referenced were buried deep in ancient texts, but they did exist. A royal could petition the council to break an arranged marriage if they could prove their alternative choice served the empire's greater interests. "The precedent is thin," Dr. Carter reported to Jake privately. "It hasn't been used in over 500 years, and even then it was controversial. But technically Princess Lyra has the right to make this petition." Meanwhile, Princess Lyra was composing her formal request to the Zephyrian Council. Jake watched her work and marveled at her intelligence and political skill. She wasn't just asking for permission to marry him. She was proposing a new model of cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. "I will argue that our marriage represents the future of interspecies relations," she explained to Jake as she wrote. "Two people from different worlds choosing love over fear and trust over suspicion. The symbolic value alone could transform how our peoples see each other." But Jake worried about the personal cost to her. "Lyra, are you sure about this? If the council rejects your petition, what happens then?" Her skin flickered with brief sadness before returning to its determined gold. "Then I will at least have tried to choose my own path. That matters more than I can explain." Lord Commander Thulmore remained opposed to the entire process. He argued that allowing Princess Lyra to break her betrothal would undermine the authority of arranged marriages throughout their society. "You open the door to chaos," he warned. "If royalty can choose their own partners, then why not commoners? Our entire social structure depends on these traditions." "Perhaps our social structure needs to evolve," Princess Lyra replied calmly. "Perhaps it is time to value personal happiness alongside political necessity." The debate continued through the night. Jake learned more about Zephyrian society than he had ever expected. Their rigid hierarchy was based on thousands of years of tradition, but it came at the cost of individual freedom. Arranged marriages were just one part of a system where personal choice was sacrificed for supposed stability. As dawn approached, Princess Lyra made a decision that surprised everyone. She requested a direct communication link with the Zephyrian home world so she could address the council personally. It was an unprecedented move that would put her in direct conflict with centuries of protocol. "Your Highness," Ambassador Mordun protested, "the Council does not take direct petitions from royalty. Everything must go through proper channels." "Then, perhaps it is time to establish new channels," Lyra replied. "If I am to be the next ruler of our empire, then I need to start showing leadership now." Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched the woman he loved take control of her destiny. She was no longer the sheltered princess who had boarded his ship days ago. She was becoming a leader who could inspire change throughout her society. The communication with the Zephyrian Council was tense and formal. Jake watched from the background as Princess Lyra presented her case with eloquence and passion. She spoke of love as a force that could unite species rather than divide them. She argued that her marriage to a human would demonstrate trust and cooperation that could benefit both civilizations. The council members appeared as holograms around the room, their faces showing various degrees of shock and disapproval. But Jake noticed that some of the younger members seemed intrigued by her arguments. Perhaps change was possible after all. "Princess Lyra," the chief counselor said after she finished her presentation, "what you propose is radical beyond measure. You ask us to abandon traditions that have served our empire for millennia. I ask you to consider that traditions should serve us, not the other way around," she replied. "Our greatest strength as a species has always been our ability to adapt and grow. This is simply another form of evolution." The council withdrew to deliberate, leaving everyone waiting in anxious silence. Jake took the opportunity to speak privately with Princess Lyra, who looked exhausted but determined. "Whatever happens," he told her, "I want you to know that watching you fight for your beliefs has been the most inspiring thing I've ever seen." She smiled and her skin showed warm golden light. "I learned from watching you and your crew, Jake. You showed me what it means to value each person's worth regardless of their rank or background. That lesson changed everything for me." They were interrupted by Lord Commander Thulmore, who approached them alone. His anger seemed to have cooled into something closer to resignation. "Princess," he said formally, "I release you from our betrothal." Both Jake and Lyra stared at him in shock. "Vex Thulmore," she said softly, "you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," he replied. "I have watched you these past days and seen something I never expected. You have become the leader our people need. Someone who can bridge old ways and new possibilities. I would rather serve under a ruler who chooses her own path than one who accepts her fate without question." Jake saw tears form in Princess Lyra's eyes as she realized what this meant. Her childhood betrothed was setting her free, not out of defeat, but out of respect for the woman she had become. The council's decision came an hour later. By a narrow margin, they approved Princess Lyra's petition with conditions. She would be allowed to marry Captain Morrison, but she must also accept a new role as ambassador between the species. Her choice would become a symbol of cooperation that both civilizations would honor. As Jake held Princess Lyra in his arms and watched her skin glow with joy and love, he realized that sometimes the most impossible dreams could come true. A simple proposal in a ship's garden had become something larger than either of them imagined. It had become hope for a better future between the stars. 3 months after the council's decision, Jake stood in the ship's main hangar, watching crews prepare for the most important ceremony in human and Zephyrian history. Workers from both species collaborated to create a wedding venue that honored both cultures. Water features flowed alongside human flowers, while Zephyrian crystal formations reflected Earth's sunlight through the large windows. Princess Lyra had spent the months learning human wedding customs, while also teaching Jake about Zephyrian bonding rituals. They decided to blend both traditions, creating something entirely new that would symbolize the union of their peoples as well as their personal love. Amy approached Jake wearing her dress uniform and a big smile. "Nervous, Captain?" she asked. Jake adjusted his formal jacket and nodded. "Terrified, actually, but also happier than I've ever been in my life." Dr. Carter joined them carrying a datapad. "I've been studying the response from both worlds to today's ceremony. The reaction has been fascinating. Many humans see this as proof that love really can conquer any obstacle. Meanwhile, younger Zephyrians are calling Princess Lyra a hero for choosing her own path. And the older generations?" Jake asked. "Mixed, but changing," Carter replied. "Your wedding has sparked debates throughout Zephyrian society about personal freedom and the role of choice in their culture. Some traditionalists are upset, but many others are starting to question why they've never had the options Lyra fought for." Jake looked through the hangar windows at the assembled fleet outside. Ships from both Earth and the Zephyrian Empire had gathered to witness the ceremony. What had started as a simple cultural exchange had grown into something that could reshape the relationship between two civilizations. "Captain," Amy said gently, "it's time." Jake took his position at the altar they had constructed in the center of the hangar. Ambassador Mordun stood nearby, ready to perform the Zephyrian portion of the ceremony, while Admiral Burke had arrived from Earth to handle the human vows. The hangar filled with guests from both species, creating a sea of human faces and Zephyrian skin tones. Music began to play, blending human instruments with Zephyrian tonal harmonies. Jake had never heard anything so beautiful. Then the hangar. Doors opened and Princess Lyra appeared. She wore a gown that seemed to be made of flowing water and starlight. The material was Zephyrian, but the style incorporated human elements, creating something that belongs